Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My last video, I got so many comments below and I wanted to address those comments today. First of all, I want to thank you guys because I got so much perspectives from all over the world and telling me how it's looking in your neck of the woods. And yeah, some people didn't see the problem, some people saw the problem, some people has been preparing for years, some people just started. A whole gamut of things that I've learned and really appreciate. But I wanted to address some of those issues today, some of the comments that made me think how to explain this a little bit more. It's not only about seeing the empty shells, but what comes before that and why this is coming and why this is happening. So my take on this whole thing, if I want to summarize, I really believe that the geopolitical era and the geopolitical way of doing things is about to completely shift. And I know the West feels it. The West meaning United States and Europe, Canada, Australia, all the Western countries. They feel it, and I believe they feel that there's nothing that they can do about it. So they are basically fighting for their survival, fighting to keep the power that they always had. But I don't think that that's going to work anymore. And the reason I believe that that era is over and they're throwing everything against the wall right now to keep their power is because it has come to a point now where other countries are saying, we're done with you. You cannot tell us anymore what to do. For example, China, India, Russia, lots of countries in Africa. And when you think about it, the West is such a small part of this world with their little clique and their little group. And they have always ignored the emerging economies and emerging countries, and they've ignored them for at least 30 to 40 years. Those countries have sneaked up and become some serious competitors, and now those countries are saying to the bully in the West, we're not listening to you anymore. For example, India. The West is now trying to tell India to stop buying oil from Russia, and India is saying no. A good comment from the foreign minister of India when he said, Europe and the West has to get out of the mindset that their problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not their problems. So basically telling India, you have to stop buying oil from Russia because you're funding this war in Ukraine. And India is saying no. Why should we stop buying oil from Russia? And the US and Europe are still buying oil and gas from Russia. How come you're not funding the war and you're telling us that we're funding the war? There's a lot of pushback in the world that the sanctions that was put on Russia is not, a lot of countries in the world don't care about them anymore. They understand sanctions do not work. They understand sanctions cripple their own economies. And the countries now understand that we also have to look out for our own interests. When a lot of people in the comments say, yeah, we don't have empty shells in our country, trust me, you will have empty shells. Another point with India. India has grain. India has lots of grain, and because we are so shorted with the grain coming out of Ukraine and Russia because of this invasion of Ukraine issue, India has seen that the Western markets has started to speculate on their grain because they're supposed to be some kind of allies with India, which isn't so. India is very neutral in this, but because they started to speculate with India's grain, India saw that the price of their grain has been going up, which is bad for their people. So India put a stop to that and said, we are not, and they said it publicly, we are not going to let the West speculate with our grain. So they took their grain off the market. their grain is now positioned to be given to their own people and given to the people in Northern Africa and African countries and around the world that has been shorted, truly shorted, and suffering from the lack of grain in the market. The foreign minister of India said he will not let what happened in the pandemic happen again, where the West was able to vaccinate all their own people and left half of the world basically to go to hell and say, yeah, you wait until our people get vaccinated and then you'll get the rest vaccines. India says, no, you will not speculate with our grain like you did during the pandemic. So basically, they're not selling grain to the West and leaving the rest of the world undone. So yeah, if you're not seeing shortages in your store, on your shelves, trust me, it's coming. Because the countries that we think we could depend upon to feed us are also pushing back and saying, no, we are not going to do this. We are not playing this game with you anymore. So yeah, the whole system is going to come crashing down. Another thing is that the West wants to put a ban on Russian oil, but expect OPEC and the United Arab Emirates to pump more oil for us here in Europe and in America. And those countries also are pushing back and saying, no, we're not going to do it. So all the things that America has done over the years, like completely destroy Venezuela and its oil production, completely squeezed Iran and its oil production and oil sales. Now they want to squeeze Russia with their oil sales, so they have to look around the world for other people to supply us with those oils. And those people are saying no. So it's going to be a problem. We are not going to get the crude oil that we need to process to make gas for your cars. You're not going to be getting the food that you need because the countries that we think that we can depend on, we have ignored them and treated them like shit for many, many years. Now we're looking to them to fill that gap. They're saying, no, we're not going to do it. There's a whole big shift in this geopolitical world, and America feels it. They know it's coming. NATO, Europe, they all know it's coming, and they're fighting to hang on with everything that they got. But I think it's too late. I really do. China has been in Africa for many years, helping them with infrastructure, helping them with banking, helping them with schools and food and everything that they need for many years, 30, 40, 50 years. Whereas the West has ignored Africa. And now all of a sudden they see that connection between China and Africa, and that they can't push themselves in between. Now they want to send billions of dollars to help Africa, and Africa is saying no, no thank you. We already have deals with Russia and China. Russia accepts students from Africa, give them scholarships, let them study for free. You cannot go from Africa to America to study for free. So over these years, Russia and China has been securing their own country, weaning themselves off of the Western way, Western systems, Western money, creating new bonds with each other because they were always ignored, kept out, sanctioned. Think about it. If you're constantly using your money to sanction, using your money as a weapon, your currency as a weapon to sanction other countries, at a certain point, your currency is so weaponized and countries are so afraid of stepping on your toes that they will find other partners. And that's what has been happening over these last 30, 40 years. New bonds have been made, new partnerships has been formed, the West has ignored it, and now they see that it's too late and they're trying to get in between, but nobody is listening to them anymore. Nobody trusts them anymore. Nobody wants to do business with them anymore. And this is where I say the geopolitical era, geopolitical shift is coming in. So one of the reasons I say that this is going to escalate and we should really be careful is because I believe that the West, NATO and its allies, they feel like they cannot lose in Ukraine against Russia. And because of that, they keep pumping weapons into Ukraine, fighting this war. But on the other hand, Russia feels that Ukraine and NATO in Ukraine is an existential threat, and they will keep pushing back. And where does this end? Never forget what happened with Japan in World War II, where there was so much sanctions put on Japan and they felt so choked that what happened, Pearl Harbor happened. When you push someone in a corner and they have no way out with sanctions and choking them economically, the only thing that they can do is lash out. And that's exactly what Japan did in World War II. And I believe this is exactly what's going to happen with Russia as well. Russia cannot afford to lose in Ukraine. We feel we cannot afford to lose face to Russia after putting so much sanctions on them and trying to squeeze them economically and back them in a corner. To lose would mean truly the end of that geopolitical era that we've been in for the last 60, 70 years. So both parties can't afford to lose, and something will break. And I think Russia will feel so backed up in a corner that they will use nuclear weapons on our heads. And don't think because you're way over there in America that you will escape it. All those weapons are pointed at America and Europe. And the same goes for the Far East with the China problem. China is feeling the same thing that Russia is feeling. Very squeezed, very surrounded, very threatened, and they too will lash out. Remember in 2008, I think it was, when NATO decided to push for Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO, despite everything that they promised that they wouldn't do that. I think that was the turning point where Russia started to build up its defenses and started to realize this is going to be a problem that we cannot fix unless we push back. And the same thing now is happening with China and Taiwan. Ukraine joining NATO was Russia's red line. And we in the West started to push Ukraine to join NATO from around 2008. And since then, I think Russia has been preparing for this, because they said, this cannot happen, we won't let this happen. And in the same breath, the same thing is happening between China and Taiwan. China's red line is that Taiwan would ask for independence, and the minute they asked for independence, China promised that they will fight to the end for Taiwan. And what do? We've been pushing Taiwan for the last years to declare independence. So we're all over the place making trouble, and trouble is here. So that's what I say. I think this whole thing is getting out of control. Nobody can lose. Nobody wants to give any ground. They're saber rattling irresponsibly, and yeah. I know that it's the way to be on our side, and how I'm speaking now might sound like I'm not. I'm not on anybody's side. I am a citizen of this world and I want things to go right. And when I see things not going right, I think it's our responsibility to speak out. Even though it's becoming harder and harder to speak out because people want to shut you up, still I think it's important that we know what exactly is going on and that we listen to alternative news and watch alternative views. I think something has to give, and something will give really soon. I'm not the expert in this. I listen to experts and not those talking heads that you see on mainstream media. All I can say is, for the people in the comments that don't feel or see what I'm talking about, realize that the media that is telling you, showing you, explaining to you what they want you to see, that's not what's really going on. You have to get every side to form an opinion. Definitely difficult times are coming. They're coming because a lot of steps in this chain of events that is taking place, it's not taking place in broad daylight for you to see, like, hey, that happened, and hey, that happened. It's happening slowly on the radar, but it's happening, and we should truly be prepared for it. And I'm going to finish by saying all the things I said before about a shift in a geopolitical system, about the West understanding that there's a shift, and they understand that they cannot lose in Ukraine. That's why they're pumping Ukraine with all kinds of weapons and pumping us with all kinds of propaganda that Ukraine is winning and Russia is losing, and they cannot let Russia win this war in Ukraine. But they also cannot let it escalate, because then we here in the West will have nuclear bombs on our head, in our cities, and the beautiful things that you see in your city every day, yes, also in America, will be destroyed. They cannot have that happen. So they have to fight this war in Ukraine and try to keep it in Ukraine. But I don't think it's going to stay that way. This will escalate, and we're in for some bad times. And not only that, but over in the Far East as well. The reason why they cannot let Russia win in Ukraine is because this shit has never happened to them before. That they were not the ones that invaded or attacked or had the gumption to do something like what Russia did to Ukraine. So if Russia wins, then other countries would understand that, hey, America, NATO, and the rest of the clique is not really anything to be feared. So they cannot let them win. But how can they stop them? I don't see how they can stop them. And China sees it, India sees it, like I say, the whole other group of countries that have been ignored, those emerging economies and emerging countries see it as well. But my question is, what comes out on the other end? What will the world look like when this is all over? I think we're going to be a lot less of what we are. A lot less of what we are right now. Anyway, guys, leave comments below, and I'll see you again in my next vlog. Cheers, and go prepare.